In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how the responsive size controls work in ButtonPlus2. We're all familiar with the standard foundation sizes for buttons of tiny, small, medium and large. And for the most part, these are the settings that you should use. It will ensure that all the buttons on your page are consistent and uniform. There are times though where you want to be able to adjust the size of the text relative to the button. And this is mostly the case when you're making round buttons and social icons and such. So if we turn this button into an icon button just by pressing the icon selector, then we'll see that the text size is still the same text size as it was when it said button text. Well, except now it's a Font Awesome icon. So let's first of all just change that to a Twitter icon. It's sort of more like a social button. Perhaps we can even change the style to a custom color and make it look a bit more like a Twitter icon. If we change the icon color as well to white, that's looking better now. So we can see now, when we change the size of the button, just like the normal text buttons, the button's changing size, but the Font Awesome icon isn't really doing what we want when we're using it as a button. So we've got various options. First of all, in the icon settings, we have an icon scale, and this is what you can use virtually all the time. It's very simple, and it just scales the icon from its normal 100% value up to 2.5 times 250%. So with general sizes of buttons, this will be sufficient. Underneath there's also a nudge control. Now, not all icons are perfectly square in the Font Awesome family, so to get it absolutely aligned, in some cases you will need to just nudge it. It only goes a small amount either side. In the case of this one, it's nice and central anyway. Now, what happens if you want more extreme sizes, or if you've got an icon that doesn't behave quite as well as this Twitter icon does? Well, we have the same responsive size settings as are in Paragraph Pro and Header Pro. We can either do two-way or four-way breakpoint controlled sizing. So let's just go two-way for now. And we can see immediately now it's applied the 1 rem default text size, and the whole button has got small. So let's put this up to 1.6. And the scale is still at 209%. So let's put the scale back to 100%. So now we're actually seeing the 1.6 rem font size. So if we were to change this to something very big, let's make this 6 rem, then the button looks fine, but the Twitter icon's too close to the sides. We can't do negative scales, but what we can do is adjust the space around the icon, and this gives us a lot more precise control. And again, there are 4 breakpoint controlled rem font sizes here. So we're on medium at the moment, I think. So if we just change that to 1 rem instead of half, then you can see now it's given us a bit more space around it. If I keep going up, then we can increase the size of the button by padding around the font. Now, this is the reason that you don't want to do this all the time, because a button is just a piece of text as a link usually, with padding around it. Now, you want the buttons to be the same size across your page and your site, so you don't want to start messing with the padding away from the predefined settings. But in the case of making a group of social icons, perhaps for your menu bar or the footer, then it does become useful to be able to control it on a more granular level. And if we, for instance, take the example of the Facebook icon. So this is the square one. Now, if we change the radius of the button, we can start to get close to it. And this is where the space around really becomes quite useful, because it essentially makes a border. So if we say go down to 0.6, perhaps 0.7, we can almost match the exposed part of our button to the thickness of the Facebook icon and make some rather attractive buttons that way. If we take another common example where this is useful, if we go to a menu bar, a hamburger FA bars icon, if you wanted that to be on a round button, if we change the radius back to 50%, you can see because we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, it comes right up to the edges at the corners and doesn't look that attractive. So in this case, we want to increase our space around, probably not that much, to about 2 rem or thereabouts. And that is the essence of creating custom sized icon buttons. If we flick to combi button straight away, you can see that font size has been applied to the text and the icon as well. Now in this case, we can adjust the size of the icon separately to the text by clicking the custom icon size, and then we now have more detailed settings for actual rem settings for the icon. Doesn't make sense just to scale it up and down. It's better to be able to have a rem setting, because then you can set it relative to your font. So if we set the font size back to something a bit more reasonable, perhaps let's put it to 1.6 rem, and we can now control the size of our split icon relative to that. So if we make that 2, it just makes it a bit more prominent. For instance, if we had a FA info, it's better than having it all exactly the same size. It just brings out the importance of it. One other thing you can do is adjust the vertical align. Now, if the icon is the same size or bigger than the font, there's no space to move it up and down. But if we make it smaller than the font, so if we make the icon 1 rem and the font's 1.6, we can then see how the vertical align changes. So that's vertical align top, baseline, bottom, and back to center. So if the vertical line doesn't seem to be doing anything, it's probably because your icon is the same or larger than the text size, in which case there's nowhere for it to go. So that's about it for responsive sizing. It's pretty obvious, as long as you remember that what we have here is essentially a link with some padding around it and a background. So if you make the text bigger, it's going to make the background bigger as well, unless you reduce the padding. And we started looking at the sizing settings in our layout section, and there is a custom padding. This is very much like the one in ButtonPlus2, but it's a bit easier to use, to be honest. So you can adjust the padding top, bottom, left and right on your button. Now again, this is not the sort of thing that you want to be doing as a matter of course, but occasionally for the odd button that needs to stand out, it can be useful. Main case in point being in a menu bar, where you may need a button that's a bit tighter padded, and the controls for it are pretty obvious and pretty visual in edit mode, so that you can easily set up your button. But I would stress again, don't start altering every button on your page, because you will lose all the benefits of the consistent styling that comes with the Foundation framework. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.